All right, welcome back, guys. Now, we were talking about the Neolithic Age, and more specifically, the changes which took place after the emergence of agriculture and animal husbandry. किस तरह के changes देखे थे हमने? Emergence of pottery, changes in technology. We had looked at changes in the subsistence pattern. We had looked at changes in the settlement and dwelling pattern. We had considered changes in social, political, and economic organization. ये सब हो चुका था. पॉटरी में क्या चेंजेस आए? The emergence of pottery took place with the emergence of agriculture. Why? Because there was need for storage of grains. टेक्नोलॉजी में किस तरह के चेंजेस आए? New kinds of tools emerged. These were highly polished celts, that is tools with handles made out of granite, which was much more durable. Tools became more refined. Their utility also increased, their robustness also increased. Further, for the development of pottery, the potter's wheel was invented, which was later used for facilitating transportation and communication over long distances. This revolutionized the scope of human interaction and exchange. So trade began on a regular basis for the first time. What was the basis for this trade? मोनेटाइज ट्रेड था या फिर बार्टर सिस्टम पे? बार्टर सिस्टम पे बेस्ड था. सबसिस्टेंस पैटर्न में क्या चेंज आया? Hunting and gathering activities continued, but they became supplementary sources for nutrition for the Neolithic people. Agriculture emerged as the mainstay of the economy. ये चेंज हमने देखा. सेटलमेंट एंड ड्वेलिंग पैटर्न में क्या चेंज देखने के लिए मिला हमें? They started to construct permanent villages. So sedentism emerged. Nomadism was replaced by sedentary lifestyle. People started building artificial homes made out of both mud bricks as well as wattle and daub methods. ये चेंज देखने के लिए मिला. सोशल पॉलिटिकल एंड इकोनॉमिक ऑर्गेनाइजेशन में क्या चेंज देखने के लिए मिलता है हमें? Hierarchy established हुआ, governance structure emerged to provide order and security. Power distribution was unequal. This is reflected in the archaeological record as well. The economic inequalities are also reflected in the archaeology. कैसे? The different sizes and qualities of houses and grave goods. Then we can also say that private property का concept अब crystallize होने लग गया society में. This is a natural outcome of the emergence of agriculture. Hunter-gatherer lifestyle lends itself to a flat economic structure. लेकिन जब इंडिविजुअल एफर्ट्स और इंडिविजुअल एंटरप्राइज के ऊपर प्रोडक्शन लिंक हो जाता है, देन प्राइवेट प्रॉपर्टी का कॉन्सेप्ट कंसोलिडेट होने लगता है. दिस इज व्हाट वाज हैपनिंग आल्सो. Wealth was unequally distributed, and as a result, we see that the sizes and the qualities of houses that the Neolithic people lived in वेरिड, राइट? तो एक ही क्वालिटी, एक ही साइज के हाउसेस नहीं होते थे. कुछ बड़े होते थे, कुछ छोटे होते थे. तो दीज काइंड्स ऑफ थिंग्स वी हैड सीन. नाउ the beginning of agriculture also brought about major changes in the social values and ethics of the Neolithic people. कैसे? जो Mesolithic people थे, they were hunters and gatherers primarily, right? hunter gatherer lifestyle में what was the pattern of consumption? You eat whatever you kill. If you do not kill, you do not eat, and whatever you kill, you have to consume immediately, right? So hunter gatherer lifestyle valued hunting skills, and it emphasized upon, or it encouraged, immediate gratification. Right? However, this was not the case for the Neolithic people. After the beginning of agriculture, settled communities emerged. And अब वैल्यू सिस्टम किस तरफ शिफ्ट हो जाएगा? टुवर्ड्स एग्रीकल्चरल स्किल्स. Whereas hunting and gathering was conducted by a band of hunters or gatherers, agriculture was performed primarily by individuals or family labor. So, इंडिविजुअल एंटरप्राइज या फिर फैमिली एंटरप्राइज, इसके ऊपर ज्यादा एम्फेसिस होगा. राइट? और एथिकल सिस्टम, पहले इमीडिएट ग्रेटिफिकेशन को एनकरेज करता था. अब is it going to encourage immediate gratification? No, in fact that is going to be discouraged. ठीक है? Instead, what would it encourage? Future planning, delayed gratification. At the same time, since the concept of private property has started to emerge and has become intimately linked with the idea of the security and order, people are going to be encouraged or discouraged to respect private property. Encouraged to respect private property. That is going to be encouraged. Further, now, since it is not always going to be possible to ensure the respect for private property, then some dispute resolution mechanism also needs to be put in place. So the ideas with regards to justice are going to become more well defined. The idea of justice would begin to emerge. Right? Now, justice की जरूरत क्यों पड़ी होगी? Because there may have been certain individuals or groups which may have been looking to take advantage of holes in the social, political and economic organization. So justice का idea, it would emerge always in the contrast of the idea of injustice. ठीक है? तो उसको address करने के लिए ही justice emerge होता है. कैसे? Crime, theft, overconsumption, etc. इनसे प्रोटेक्ट करने के लिए सोसाइटी को द आइडिया ऑफ जस्टिस वुड हैव आल्सो emerged. Right? Changes would also be witnessed in the religious beliefs and practices. How? पहले हंटर एंड गैदरर्स किस तरह का रिलीजन फॉलो करते थे? एनिमिज्म, that is attributing divine powers or supernatural agency to natural elements. अब सेटल्ड कम्युनिटीज किस चीज को ज्यादा वैल्यू करने लगेंगे? their existence, their survival is dependent upon agriculture primarily, and agriculture is a function, or a success in agriculture is a function of fertility, right? So fertility cults are going to emerge. That is why from this point onwards we are going to see greater discoveries, or more numerous discoveries of mother goddess statues, right, which is a fertility symbols. Then phallic and or other fertility symbols are going to be worshipped as well, right? So phallus worship, yoni worship, ये सब emerge होने लग जाएगा from this point onwards. The cult of animal sacrifice would also emerge from this point onwards. Fire cults would also emerge. So fire is always considered to be a medium through which human beings can communicate directly with the gods. So gods को अगर कोई gift देने हो, so you just commit them to fire. The rising smoke is going to transmit them to the gods. That is the idea. Fertility cult etc. ये सब emerge होने लग जाएगा. इस तरह से social values and ethics evolve होंगे from this point onwards. Clear? लिख लीजिए इसको. Due to the transformation of humans into food producers, comma, there was a major shift in the value system and ethics. Next point. The Mesolithic man was a hunter-gatherer who had to eat whatever he killed. Who had to eat whatever he killed immediately. Full stop. If unsuccessful, comma, he would remain hungry. He would remain hungry. Full stop. Subpoint. As such, the Mesolithic culture valued the hunting skills and encouraged the ethic of immediate gratification. Right? And in such a scenario कि जब हंटर कोड को वैल्यू किया जा रहा है और इमीडिएट ग्रेटिफिकेशन को एनकरेज किया जा रहा है, तो कॉन्फ्लिक्ट रेजोल्यूशन का क्या जरिया होता होगा? वायलेंस. ठीक है, तो राइट डाउन इन सच अ सिनारियो सब पॉइंट. नेक्स्ट सब पॉइंट. इन सच अ सिनारियो violence was often the only means of conflict resolution. ठीक है. There's a place called Sarai Nahar Rai in eastern UP. It is a Mesolithic site from where we get the earliest evidence of human conflict. क्या मिला है यहाँ से? Some skeletons in which the skulls of the individuals have been pierced by arrowheads. ठीक है? So from here we know that conflict resolution के लिए violence use किया जाता था. Write down. Next sub point. At Sarai Nahar Rai, comma, we have at Sarai Nahar Rai, comma, we have discovered skeletons with skulls pierced by arrows. Full stop. This is the earliest evidence of human conflict at an organized scale. ठीक है? नेक्स्ट मेन पॉइंट लिखो. With the emergence of settled communities, the value system shifted away from hunter skills towards farmer skills. Full stop. Subpoint. Individual or family enterprise was valued over joint efforts by the entire community due to the emergence of the concept of private ownership. Full stop. Next subpoint. The new ethical system discouraged immediate gratification. Full stop. Instead, it emphasized upon the importance of future planning and delayed gratification. It emphasized upon the importance of future planning and delayed gratification. Full stop. Next subpoint. Further, comma, the ethical system of the Neolithic society also encouraged a respect for private property since it was interlinked, with the priorities of order and security. Full stop. Next subpoint. Due to the unequal distribution of wealth and the very nature of human psychology, comma, social malaise means social disease, social malaise and conflict also emerged, taking the shape of crime, theft and overconsumption. Crime, theft and overconsumption. Next subpoint. To overcome this, comma, to overcome this, the idea of justice began emerging. ठीक है? So the emergence of agriculture not only radically transformed the way in which human beings used to live their lives when assessed materially, but also had a major impact on the human psychology, the value system and ethics which it drove society. ठीक है? Similarly, it also had a major impact on social bonds. कैसे? Now, before human beings became food producers, what was the utility of food? It was only for consumption. But after human beings began producing their own food, food no longer remained only for eating. It also became a मीडियम ऑफ वैल्यू. ठीक है? और आप उस वैल्यू को दे करके अपने बॉन्ड्स को स्ट्रेंथन कर सकते हो. दैट इज अ कॉस्ट दैट यू आर रेडी टू अज्यूम फॉर सम अदर गेन्स. फॉर एग्जाम्पल, reciprocity and cooperation की जो मशीनरी है उसको गैल्वेनाइज करने के लिए जो मेजर ल्यूब्रिकेंट है वो किस तरह से इमर्ज हुआ? फूड के फॉर्म में. राइट? फॉर एग्जाम्पल, रेसिप्रोसिटी का मतलब क्या होता है? एक हाथ से लेना, दूसरे हाथ से देना. So if some people were to pool their resources together and out of their surplus एक portion अपने political leader को देते हैं, are they doing this out of their own free will simply because he is their leader, or do they expect something in return? They expect something in return. क्या expect करेंगे? प्रोटेक्शन एक्सपेक्ट करेंगे, ऑर्डर एक्सपेक्ट करेंगे, दैट देयर प्राइवेट प्रॉपर्टी, देयर लाइफ, दे आर नॉट गोइंग टू बी वायलेटेड. These kinds of things they are going to expect. Right? Secondly, it is also a valuable tool to extract cooperation. क्या? Suppose there is a dispute but progress has been stalled with regards to a specific activity. because the other parties are not ready to cooperate. So in order to extract that cooperation, make them a gift. Okay? It also played a very important role in transforming the religious outlook. क्या देखने के लिए मिलेगा हमें अब? The emergence of a new class of individuals which may have existed even before this but became a permanent fixture of all cultures from this point onwards. And कौन है ये? The priestly class. Now, some food may be donated by a group of individuals or by individuals to these priests, to these shamans, and in return for that, what do they expect? They expect the priest to ensure cosmic insurance, divine protection for them, or they expect the priest to communicate on their behalf with the gods, convey their wishes and message to God, and so that God becomes happy, वो कुछ और sacrifice भी कर सकते हैं. So religious outlook changed with the emergence of the priestly class and the emergence of the sacrifice cult. Food also became a major social galvanizer, right? कैसे? On specific occasions, in order to celebrate an achievement, लोग क्या करते हैं? दावत देते हैं, feast throw करते हैं. So feasting also emerged as a major social galvanizer. Further, in order to win social respectability, to climb the ladder of the social hierarchy, what do the rich people always do? They make donations towards some important causes, right? So food may have also acted as a currency to purchase social respectability. So through donations, this may have been done. And finally, जब गर्लफ्रेंड नाराज हो जाती है तो क्या करते हैं? सबसे पॉपुलर गिफ्ट क्या होता है? चॉकलेट होता है, राइट? दैट इज ऑल्सो अ टाइप ऑफ फूड. क्यों दिया जाता है? To strengthen social bonds, or simply to express love, affection, or as a visual and physical representation of an intangible emotion towards somebody else, to tell them that they are valuable to you. ठीक है? तो इस तरह से सोशल बॉन्ड्स अब रीडिफाइन होने लग जाएंगे. इट इज नॉट दैट ये इसके पहले नहीं होता था, but because of the beginning of agriculture and the rising importance of food in regulating the lives and the social interactions of people, it's important, the importance of these kinds of activities is going to become even stronger in defining the new social bonds. Clear? Right, write down. Food became the focal point for emerging social relations, for emerging social relations based upon the concept of reciprocity. Full stop. Example: when a chief receives tribute of grain, when a chief receives a tribute of grain, comma, he is expected to provide protection and order to his people. To his people. Full stop. Next point. Food also became an important mechanism to shape the new religious outlook and practices. Full stop. Subpoint. It represented a gift or donation, or fee, that could be given to a priest resulting in the priestly class becoming a permanent fixture of human society. A permanent fixture of human society. Full stop. Next point. Similarly, the concept of sacrifice as a gift to God also cemented itself within the religious system. Often grains or animals would be sacrificed to please the gods. Full stop. Next point. Feasting and donations. Next main point. Feasting and donation became a mechanism for individuals and groups to attain social respectability and legitimacy. Full stop. Next point. The concept of gift giving as a means to express emotional affinity or goodwill became a norm in society. क्लियर है? तो ये चेंजेस हुए हमारे सोशल बॉन्ड्स में. तो कोई भी क्वेश्चन आता है ना, तो यू कैन एनालाइज इट एट 2 लेवल्स. एक तो लोअर लेवल का एनालिसिस करोगे तो वही पैरामीटर जो हमने पहले डिस्कस किए थे उसके ऊपर बात करोगे. हायर लेवल का एनालिसिस अगर आपको करना पड़ेगा ना, तो यू हैव टू रीड बिटवीन द लाइंस. इस तरह से एनालिसिस करना पड़ेगा. कि उसकी वजह से क्या क्या चेंजेस हुए होंगे इन द वे इन विच ह्यूमन बींग्स इंटरेक्टेड विद ईच अदर, इन द वे इन विच ह्यूमन बींग्स ऑर्गेनाइज देमसेल्व्स इनटू हायरार्कीज, what may have been the possible ways in or possible ways in which this hierarchy functioned, what was the kind of power distribution, etc. right? So ये थोड़ा higher level का analysis होगा, that is going to come with practice. हमने देखा कि सोशल बॉन्ड्स को कैसे इसने इन्फ्लुएंस किया. नेक्स्ट, दिस ऑल्सो ब्रॉट अबाउट चेंजेस इन दी रिलीजियस बिलीफ्स एंड प्रैक्टिसेस. क्या देखने के लिए मिलता है हमें? दैट अब द फर्टिलिटी कल्ट is going to become the dominant religious belief. We also find the presence of a multiplicity or multiple burial or funerary practices, such as direct burial, double burial, burial with a red shroud, dog burial, secondary burial, pit burial, fragmentary burial, partial burial, etc. ठीक है? This is more than sufficient. What does this tell us? डबल बेरियल क्या दिखाता है हमको? डायरेक्ट बेरियल क्या दिखाता है? अच्छा, फिर डबल बेरियल क्या दिखाता है? दो लोग एक साथ दफन है, राइट? व्हाट कैन दैट इंडिकेट? Institution of marriage may have existed, the principle of monogamy may have been the dominant feature, but this is not necessary. It may also reflect the practice of human sacrifice, that at the death of the master, the slave is also killed and buried with him in order to serve him in the afterlife. This can also indicate the presence of unequal power distribution, where there is a master and there is a slave. Dog burial कहाँ से देखने के लिए मिलता है? कश्मीर से देखने के लिए मिलता है, बुरजोम से, राइट? व्हाट डज दैट टेल अस? डोमेस्टिकेशन ऑफ एनिमल्स वाज टेकिंग प्लेस. सेकेंडरी बेरियल, पिट बेरियल, फ्रैगमेंटरी बेरियल, पार्शियल बेरियल, डायरेक्ट बेरियल, ये अलग अलग तरह के बेरियल्स देखने के लिए मिल रहे हैं. व्हाट डज दैट टेल अस? इस समय भी लोग अपने डेड को अलग अलग तरह से डिस्पोज करते हैं कि नहीं करते हैं, बट दीज पीपल बिलोंग टू डिफरेंट रिलीजियस फेथ्स. तो इसका मतलब क्या हुआ? दैट दीज पीपल मे हैव आल्सो बीन फॉलोइंग different sets of religious beliefs, right? So these kinds of things can be interpreted from these burials. और क्या पता लग सकता है हमें? क्लास डिफरेंसेस के बारे में पता लगता है? पता लगता है. Do we get to know about the presence of the concept of life after death? Yes. कैसे? Because they are always buried with certain grave goods. Do we get to know about the practice of or about the emergence of deeper social bonds? यस. कैसे? क्योंकि इनको प्रॉपर तरह से प्रॉपर रिचुअल्स फॉलो करके बेरी किया जा रहा है. डू वी गेट इंडिकेशन थ्रू दीज डिफरेंट काइंड्स ऑफ बेरियल्स दैट ग्रेटर कॉन्शियसनेस ऑफ फैमिली एंड एंसेस्ट्री वाज इमर्जिंग? यस. डू वी गेट एनी इंडिकेशन ऑफ द प्रैक्टिस ऑफ एंसेस्टर वर्शिप आल्सो? Yes, because we have certain leftover remains of food and flowers or other objects that were put on top of these graves by their family members later on, right? So these kinds of things we get to know. Now, लेकिन हमें कुछ चीजें नहीं पता लग सकती हैं, जैसे कि अभी भी इंडिया में the majority of the people, how do they dispose of their dead, how do they send off their dead? Cremation, right? उस समय अगर कोई अपने डेड को क्रिमेट करता होगा तो उसके कोई फिजिकल रिमेन्स बचे होंगे? नहीं बचे होंगे, राइट? So our picture remains incomplete with regards to religion only on the basis of burials, right? So there may have been certain cultures which cremated their dead, but we do not know about this peculiarity because of the absence of such material. We are not able to obtain such material. Does this mean that the Neolithic people never cremated their dead? नहीं, एविडेंस का ना मिलना ये प्रूफ नहीं करता है कि वो प्रैक्टिस होती ही नहीं थी. तो एब्सेंस ऑफ प्रूफ इज नॉट प्रूफ ऑफ एब्सेंस, राइट? So that is the case over here. लिख लीजिए इसको, रिलीजियस बिलीफ्स एंड प्रैक्टिसेस. With the emergence of agriculture, comma, there was a shift from animism towards the fertility cult. Towards the fertility cult. From animism towards the fertility cult. Full stop. How do we explain this? Why shift towards fertility cult? Because success in agriculture depends on the fertility of the land. So what would these people pray for? For fertility, for better produce, right? Write down. This is explained by the rising importance of fertility for agricultural production. Full stop. The Neolithic people worshipped for or prayed for, the Neolithic people prayed for abundant crops and healthy animals. So with this, we can also mark a major change of direction from the religion being naturalistic towards becoming materialistic. Okay? Write down. As such, there was a distinct infusion of materialism within the Neolithic religion. Within the Neolithic religion. Full stop. Next main point. A number of funerary practices emerged among the Neolithic people. Full stop. Different Neolithic communities practiced, one by one you can write these down. Direct burial, double burial, burial with a red shroud, dog burial, secondary burial, pit burial, fragmentary burial, partial burial, etc. Partial burial, etc. Full stop. Next point. These practices indicate वन बाय वन सब पॉइंट करके 1 2 3 4 करके लिख लो. नंबर 1, the presence of multiple religious beliefs. Number 2, the deepening concept of life after death. Number 3, the strengthening social bonds. Number 4, rising consciousness of lineage or ancestry. Number 5, rising respect towards ancestors, including the practice of ancestor worship. Next point. Number 6, the possibility of human and animal sacrifice. Number 7, the deepening emotional bonds between humans and animals. ठीक है. So these were the changes which took place with respect to religion with the beginning of agriculture. Now, after the beginning of agriculture, were there any changes registered in the standard of living, quality of life में कोई change आएगा? बिल्कुल आएगा. तो स्टैंडर्ड ऑफ लिविंग में किस तरह के चेंजेस आए, ये देखना है हमें. अब स्टैंडर्ड ऑफ लिविंग और क्वालिटी ऑफ लाइफ को डिफाइन करने के लिए कुछ पैरामीटर्स होने चाहिए. किस तरह के पैरामीटर्स अप्लाई होंगे यहाँ पर? ह्यूमन डेवलपमेंट इंडेक्स बनाने के लिए किस तरह के इंडिकेटर्स कंसिडर किए जाते हैं? लाइफ एक्सपेक्टेंसी, morbidity, and availability of food. ठीक है. With the beginning of agriculture during the Neolithic Age, फूड अवेलेबिलिटी पे क्या इम्पैक्ट पड़ा होगा? ये इंक्रीज हुआ होगा या डिक्लाइन हुआ होगा? इंक्रीज हुआ. As a result of which, what would happen to the human population? That would also increase. In comparison to the Mesolithic period में hunter gatherer lifestyle होता था. Those who were in a condition to hunt were better off. So if you are injured or sick, or if you are a pregnant woman or an elderly person, you would be dependent upon others. Your survival would not be assured. अब इसके चांसेस आफ्टर द बिगनिंग ऑफ एग्रीकल्चर उतने ही रहेंगे, या उससे इंक्रीज हो जाएंगे, या उससे डिक्रीज हो जाएंगे? डिक्रीज हो जाएंगे. सो क्रॉनिक हंगर वुड गो डाउन. ठीक है. एंड व्हाट डज ऑल ऑफ दिस इंडिकेट? दैट स्टैंडर्ड ऑफ लिविंग इंप्रूव हुआ था या डिक्लाइन हुआ था? इंप्रूव हुआ था. लेकिन कहानी का दूसरा पहलू भी है, राइट? क्या देखने के लिए मिलता है? ऑल द फूड अवेलेबिलिटी हैड इंक्रीज्ड, what was the nutrient mixture that was now available? Agriculture was the mainstay of the economy. Hunting gathering activities provided only supplemental nutrition. Mesolithic hunter gatherer का डाइट किन चीजों को कंसिस्ट करता होगा? फिश को, मीट को, लीफी वेजिटेबल्स एंड प्लांट्स को, नंबर ऑफ अदर रूट्स, ट्यूबर्स एटसेट्रा, राइट? सो मिक्स डाइट होता था. ऑल द मैक्रो एंड माइक्रो न्यूट्रिएंट्स ही वाज गेटिंग इन good mixture. Now what is going to happen? The diet would be dominated by grains. Now grains are extremely rich in carbohydrates but poor in protein and other micronutrients. So the nutritional balance was degraded. ठीक है. Secondly, did the beginning of agriculture ensure complete food security? No. Why? Because primitive agriculture tha, people did not have access to modern agricultural implements or modern technology or modern inputs such as fertilizers and pesticides. The agriculture was primarily rain fed. Artificial irrigation के बारे में जानकारी नहीं थी. In fact, plowing also emerged much later on, right? So as a result, अगर क्लाइमेटिक सिस्टम्स में थोड़ा सा भी फ्लक्चुएशन होता है, so this would impact the lives of the people extremely gravely. There would be a crash in food production and it would cause major episodes of starvation. Okay? So population collapse due to starvation became much more frequent. All right. Further, since people began living in permanently settled villages, कुछ नए concerns emerge हो गए, such as hygiene and sanitation. Do you think that the Neolithic man had proper understanding of the importance of hygiene and sanitation? Nahi. And this also led to higher susceptibility to both communicable as well as non-communicable diseases. So morbidity increase भी हो सकता है. This was further compounded by the poor nutritional balance, because of which immunity was lower, right? So while Mesolithic period में जो population का graph है with respect to time, it would remain largely stable. After the emergence of agriculture क्या हुआ? In good periods, the population would grow, but in lean periods, it would crash. Then it would start growing again, and then it would crash again. Okay? So, because the Neolithic man's agriculture was still in its primitive stage, he was unable to leave the, you can say, trap of human evolution even now. Okay? And it is only with gradual improvements in technology, which took place over a long period of more than 3,000 years, that he was finally able to come to the launch pad from where he was able to propel himself to the stage of civilization, Harappan civilization. इतना क्लियर है? राइट. तो ये नेक्स्ट देख लेते हैं हम, स्टैंडर्ड ऑफ लिविंग. राइट डाउन the important indicators of standard of living include life expectancy, morbidity, and food availability. Full stop. Next point. With the beginning of agriculture and animal domestication, comma, the availability of food increased quantitatively. Full stop. Sub point. Chronic hunger would have affected relatively fewer people. Full stop. Next sub point. The more vulnerable sections of the population, such as the elderly, pregnant women, the relatively more vulnerable sections of the population, such as the elderly, pregnant women, the sick, or the injured, etc., would be more food secure in relation to or in comparison to the Mesolithic period. Full stop. Next sub point. As a result, life expectancy and population registered an increase. Registered an increase. Next main point लिखो. However, comma, the value of food is not judged on the basis of quantity alone, comma, quality is a very important component of nutrition. Subpoint. The Mesolithic hunter-gatherer diet consisted of meat, fish, vegetables, roots and tubers, along with other leafy plants and herbs. Leafy plants and herbs. Full stop. Thus, it consisted of a wholesome and balanced nutritive mix. Next subpoint. On the other hand, comma, the Neolithic diet was dominated by food grains. Full stop. It was rich in carbohydrates, but poor. It was rich in carbohydrates, but poor in protein and other micronutrients. Full stop. As such, comma, the Neolithic man had lower immunity. ठीक है. नेक्स्ट मेन पॉइंट लिखो. Secondly, the beginning of agriculture did not necessarily ensure Food security. Food security. Full stop. Did not necessarily ensure food security. Write down subpoint. Primitive agriculture. Primitive agriculture was subsistence based. And heavily dependent upon climatic conditions. Full stop. The surplus was extremely low. And food shortages were common. Full stop. Next point. Adverse weather events such as floods and droughts or pest infestation could cause crop failures, resulting in cause crop failures, resulting in sudden population crashes. Full stop. Next main point. On the whole, while it may be said that the standard of life improved in some respects, with the beginning of agriculture. Full stop. On the other hand, the charming, simple, and free life of the Mesolithic hunter-gatherer had its own advantages. ठीक है? So these are the various changes brought about by the beginning of agriculture. Now take down a question. Question लिखो. The quality of the Neolithic man's life was much better than his Mesolithic ancestor. Critically analyze. $200 words, 15 marks. हो जाएगा? क्या डिस्कशन करना है हमें? वही जो अभी किया है हमने. ठीक है. टेक डाउन another question. To what extent archaeological sources are useful in understanding the Neolithic man's life? $200 words. इसको कैसे एड्रेस करना है? इंट्रोडक्शन फॉर एग्जाम्पल, किस तरह से करना चाहिए? Should we talk about archaeological evidence or should we talk about the Neolithic age or should we talk about both? कैसे? First of all, the context of the Neolithic age in India should be provided. That several Neolithic communities sprouted up across different regions of the Indian subcontinent between 6000 to 1000 BC. These were the earliest agrarian communities who have left behind unique cultural remains available to us as archaeological evidence. And this archaeological evidence is of extremely great value in understanding the life of the Neolithic man. ठीक है, तो ये आपका इंट्रोडक्शन हो जाएगा. यू हैव प्रोवाइडेड द कॉन्टेक्स्ट ऑफ द न्यूलिथिक एज. यू हैव ऑल्सो हाईलाइटेड द इम्पोर्टेंस ऑफ आर्कियोलॉजिकल एविडेंस एंड यू हैव ऑल्सो सीन कि किस तरह का यूनिक एविडेंस हमको यहाँ से मिलने वाला है. एंड देन हमारा ऑब्जेक्टिव क्या होना चाहिए? To see how different dimensions of Neolithic life can be illuminated to us through archaeology. For example, ये कहाँ पे प्रेजेंट थे, कहाँ कहाँ से आर्कियोलॉजिकल डिस्कवरीज हुई हैं. फॉर एग्जाम्पल Western Neolithic culture, Kashmir Neolithic culture, the Lower Gangetic Valley Neolithic culture, or Northeastern Neolithic culture, or the Neolithic cultures which flourished in the northern fringes of the Vindhyas, और the southern Neolithic cultures, etc. ये सब के बारे में बात कर सकते हैं हम. Then, on the basis of the analysis of archaeology, we can talk about their subsistence pattern. For example, Mehergarh, 7000 BC, we get the first evidence of the cultivation of wheat, which is the earliest in India. From Koldhiva, around 6000 BC, we get the earliest evidence of the cultivation of rice in India. In South Indian Neolithic, which flourished from roughly 2900 BC onwards, we find agriculture took place, but they exclusively cultivated millets, and agriculture was of relatively lesser importance in comparison to animal husbandry, animal domestication. Then we can talk about their technology, what kind of tools we have found, unique elements also we can highlight. For example, South Indian Neolithic, say, what do we find? The continued use of quartzite for making tools, and we find the use of broad shouldered celts, यानी कि अगर एक्स बनाना होगा तो it would be of this shape, right? तो broad shoulder है, जो cutting edge है, that is relatively smaller. ये obviously it would be, the shaft would be much longer. इसको इग्नोर कर दीजिएगा, ठीक है? From ईस्टर्न इंडिया, बिहार, ईस्टर्न यूपी वाला जो रीजन है, नॉर्थ ईस्टर्न यूपी वाला रीजन, वहां से हमें क्या मिलता है? In association with stone tools, we find the use of bone tools and tools made of deer antlers. Right? These kinds of things we can find. Then we can also know about their dwelling and subsistence pattern. Okay? We can also learn about the characteristics of Neolithic society. We can take a look at political and economic hierarchies. We can talk about their standard of living, especially in comparison to the Mesolithic age. We can talk about their religion, culture and art. Similarly, we can talk about their societal values and ethics. ठीक है, तो यहां पे करना क्या है, जितने ज्यादा डायमेंशंस आप इंक्लूड कर सकते हैं उतने ज्यादा डायमेंशंस इंक्लूड करने हैं। तो जितने भी यहाँ पे 8-9 जितने भी डायमेंशंस हैं, इनके बारे में यू विल राइट 15-20 वर्ड्स एंड देन यू विल मूव ऑन। और कोशिश क्या करनी है, that if it is not possible for you to provide one example for every dimension, then at least 5-6 के लिए एक एक एग्जाम्पल आप दे सकते हो। ठीक है, हर एक के लिए लिखना जरूरी नहीं है, यू ऑल्सो हैव टू टेक केयर ऑफ स्पेस एंड टाइम, राइट। एंड एक और चीज आपको ध्यान में रखनी चाहिए, दैट इतना ज्यादा आपका एग्जाम्पल्स के ऊपर, आर्कियोलॉजिकल एविडेंस के ऊपर फोकस नहीं होना चाहिए कि वो नैरेटिव खो जाए आपका। तो फर्स्ट प्रायोरिटी शुड बी ऑन नैरेटिव, दैट इज दिस डायमेंशनल एनालिसिस। सेकेंड प्रायोरिटी शुड बी सप्लीमेंट्री एविडेंस। तो हर एक के लिए नहीं करना है, 3-4 के लिए, 5 के लिए कर देंगे तो दैट वुड बी मोर देन इनफ, राइट। देन कंक्लूजन, कैसे कंक्लूड करेंगे हम इसको, किस नोट पे करना चाहिए? क्वेश्चन क्या है? To what extent are archaeological sources useful in telling us about the life of the, in understanding the Neolithic man's life, right? यही क्वेश्चन है ना। तो एंड में आपको क्या करना होगा, that while archaeology is extremely useful in unearthing the Neolithic past, especially since it is the only source available, आर्कियोलॉजी के साथ क्या होता है, कुछ प्रैक्टिकल लिमिटेशंस होते हैं। Resulting in the appearance of gaps in our understanding. For example, it is unclear to us that which particular Neolithic cultures traded with which other Neolithic cultures, right? What was the commodity that they exchanged? Volume of trade कितना था, कितने समय तक चला, right? ये सब हमको नहीं पता लग सकता। We cannot get further details about their religious life, their societal values, right? So these are some of the practical limitations. And thus, our understanding remains limited. ठीक है? Does that mean our understanding of the Neolithic past can never improve? It can improve. कैसे? Yes. New findings, new methods, and new पर्सपेक्टिव्स के इन्फ्यूजन के थ्रू। ठीक है, ग्रेजुअली ये ट्रेंड हमें आर्कियोलॉजी में देखने के लिए भी मिल रहा है। हाउ? आर्कियोलॉजी इज इंक्रीजिंगली बिकमिंग एन इंटरडिसिप्लिनरी साइंस, जहाँ पे बायोलॉजिस्ट का, केमिकल इंजीनियर्स का या फिर केमिकल एक्सपर्ट्स का, रेडियोलॉजिस्ट्स का, इंजीनियर्स का, एंथ्रोपोलॉजिस्ट का, सोशियोलॉजिस्ट का, सबका कंट्रीब्यूशन अब इंपॉर्टेंट होते जा रहा है। क्लियर है? सो दिस इज हाउ दिस चैलेंज कुड बी ओवरकम. सो दैट शुड बी आवर conclusion. All right. Now, another question. The Neolithic Revolution was no revolution at all. Discuss critically. इस क्वेश्चन को आंसर करने के लिए मोस्ट अप्रोप्रिएट इंट्रोडक्शन क्या होगा? ये जो टर्म है न्यूलिथिक रेवोल्यूशन, इसका कॉन्टेक्स्ट प्रोवाइड किया जाए. दिस टर्म वाज कॉइन्ड बाय विंसेंट गॉर्डन चाइल्ड to explain what? To explain the changes in the human condition brought about by the beginning of एग्रीकल्चर. क्या चेंजेस हैं ये? यही वाले जो अभी तक हमने सारे देखे हैं. ठीक है, टेक्नोलॉजी में चेंजेस, पोएट्री का इंट्रोडक्शन, सब्सिस्टेंस पैटर्न में चेंजेस, सेटलमेंट एंड ड्वेलिंग पैटर्न में चेंजेस, सोशल पॉलिटिकल एंड इकोनॉमिक ऑर्गेनाइजेशन में चेंजेस, वैल्यू एंड एथिकल सिस्टम्स में चेंजेस, सोशल बॉन्ड्स में ट्रांसफॉर्मेशन, रिलीजियस बिलीफ्स में चेंजेस एंड स्टैंडर्ड ऑफ लिविंग में चेंजेस. सो दीज आर दी चेंजेस. तो एक एक करके आपको इसमें से सारे ना लिखो तो कम से कम 5-6 यहाँ पे इंट्रोडक्शन में लिख देने चाहिए. क्लियर? अच्छा, नाउ नेक्स्ट टास्क क्या होगा हमारा? टू प्रेजेंट आर्गुमेंट्स फॉर एंड अगेंस्ट दिस प्रीमाइज कि नियोलिथिक रेवोल्यूशन नहीं था और नियोलिथिक रेवोल्यूशन एक्चुअली रेवोल्यूशन था. तो पहले क्या एड्रेस करना चाहिए? पहले क्या देखना चाहिए? इट वॉज नॉट अ रेवोल्यूशन और इट वॉज अ रेवोल्यूशन? सी, अगर आप पहले बोलोगे दैट इट वाज अ रेवोल्यूशन तो सेकंड में बोलोगे इट वाज नॉट अ रेवोल्यूशन. राइट? एंड फाइनली कंक्लूड आपको क्या करना होगा? रेवोल्यूशन था. तो आपका टास्क थोड़ा मुश्किल हो जाएगा. तो बेटर स्ट्रैटेजी वुड बी टू प्रेजेंट द आर्गुमेंट्स दैट इट वाज नॉट अ रेवोल्यूशन फर्स्ट. ठीक है? सो व्हाई शुड इट नॉट बी कंसिडर्ड टू बी अ रेवोल्यूशन? रेवोल्यूशन के पैरामीटर्स क्या होते हैं? दैट इट इज सडन, it is drastic or radical, and it is universal. राइट? न्यूलिथिक पीरियड का टाइम पीरियड क्या है? 6000 टू 1000 BC. सबसे छोटा वाला भी लेते हैं 6000 टू 3000 BC. तो ये 3000 ईयर्स के टाइम पीरियड पर, टाइम स्केल पर ये चेंजेस हो रहे हैं. कुड दिस बी कैटेगराइज्ड एज सडन चेंजेस? नॉट एट ऑल. तो चेंजेस सडन इनफ नहीं थे. वर द चेंजेस ड्रास्टिक और रेडिकल इनफ? यहाँ पे आर्ग्यूमेंट क्या है? That many of the changes which are being ascribed to the Neolithic revolution actually began much before it. For example, agriculture, animal husbandry, artificial dwellings, they had emerged as early as the Mesolithic age itself. So to characterize this revolution as a Neolithic revolution would be incorrect. It was not a Neolithic phenomenon. ठीक है? And lastly, were these changes universal? No, they manifested themselves at different stages in different regions. ठीक है? And thus it has been argued that it was not universal. Clear? अब क्या करना होगा हमें? Next set of arguments that it was a revolution. Now if we see this on this same criteria, पहले हमने आर्ग्यू किया था कि सडन इनफ नहीं था, बट कितने टाइम में ये सारे चेंजेस हुए हैं? 3000 years में. If you look at the changes in the human condition over the 3 lakh years preceding this, उसके मुकाबले में इस छोटे से 300 years के पीरियड में ज्यादा चेंजेस हुए हैं, राइट? सो if we change our perspective and take a bird's eye view of the developments which took place, the developments were quite sudden, right? So it was sudden enough, definitely. दूसरा क्या बोला है? That these were not radical enough, these were not drastic enough. Why? Because it has been argued that human condition में कोई basic change आया नहीं. But this is patently untrue. Why? Because with the beginning of agriculture and animal husbandry, the relationship of man with land and man with animals completely transformed. Earlier, he was dependent upon nature completely for food. Now he became self-sufficient. He was earlier a food consumer, now became a food producer. And this brought man to the penultimate stage before civilization. Earliest civilization in the subcontinent, हड़प्पन civilization. कैसे शुरुआत होती है इसकी? With the beginning of agriculture, human beings start producing their own food. Gradually, they graduate from subsistence agriculture to surplus agriculture. And as the size of the surplus increases, a certain number of people, a proportion of the population is freed to pursue other activities. क्या करना शुरू करेंगे ये? Secondary economic activities such as crafts production and trade, right? In order to facilitate easier exchange of the goods being produced, these people are going to start living together. तो इस नॉन अग्रेरियन पॉपुलेशन के अब accumulation से मर्ज होने लग जाएंगे. न्यू सेटलमेंट्स which are removed from the agricultural fields, they are going to spring up. As similar such settlements start emerging across this region, इनके बीच में ट्रेड शुरू हो जाएगा and trade networks are going to emerge as well. So crafts and trade production is going to become the key towards urbanization. Now, this non-agrarian population living in cities, it needs order, it needs raw material, it needs other supplies which are necessary. वो कौन provide करवाएगा? Some kind of governance structure. Governance is going to emerge, right? And गवर्नमेंट वर्क और ट्रेड को कंडक्ट करने के लिए क्या मुंह जबानी काम चल जाएगा? नहीं, रिटन ऑर्डर्स आर गोइंग टू बी रिक्वायर्ड एंड दस script is going to be developed, right? These are the main constituents of any civilization. इस पूरी civilization का basis क्या है? What is the entire basis of the civilization? Agriculture. And when did agriculture emerge? In the Neolithic period. Therefore, would it be correct to say that the Neolithic age was not a revolutionary development? गलत होगा वैसा बोलना, ठीक है? It was definitely a revolution. And finally, when it comes to the allegation of not being universal, हम क्या बोल सकते हैं? That the Neolithic cultures represented a major change in the way in which human society was evolving. It was unlike any of the later political or technological revolutions experienced during the modern period. Revolutions such as the American or the French Revolution or the Russian Revolution or the Chinese Revolution or even the Industrial Revolution. जब इस तरह के मेजर चेंजेस होते हैं तो they often tend to pan out across centuries and their effects are felt at different stages in different regions. For example, French Revolution का importance क्या है world history में? The emergence of nationalism, liberalism, and the creed of equality, the Bill of Rights, right? So, or the declaration of the Charter of the Bill of Man and Citizen, right? So, these kinds of things. So, यहाँ पे हम ये बोल सकते हैं that social developments or socio-economic and political developments often tend to manifest over a long period. तो हमें पूरे ब्रेड्थ ऑफ चेंजेस को कंसिडर करने की जरूरत नहीं है, सिंपली स्टार्टिंग पॉइंट को कंसिडर करने की जरूरत है. स्टार्टिंग पॉइंट क्या है? बिगनिंग ऑफ एग्रीकल्चर. And that definitely took place in the Neolithic period itself. Conclusion क्या लिखेंगे हम? That on the basis of this argument, it is apparent that the Neolithic revolution was definitely a revolution. It was the final stage of human evolution before human beings created the earliest Bronze Age civilizations. ठीक है? So इसी को आपको लिखना है. Write down a few points. लिख लो इसको. The term Neolithic revolution was coined by Vincent Gordon Child. To refer to the radical Socioeconomic, the radical socioeconomic, technological, political, cultural, and philosophical changes introduced, or sorry, induced by the beginning of agriculture, by the beginning of agriculture. Full stop. Since then, it has been a major center of, or it has been a major subject of historical debate, with some scholars arguing that it was not a true revolution, while the others arguing that it was revolutionary. Arguing that it was revolutionary. ठीक है? सब हेडिंग दो. It was not a true revolution. Write down. The critics of Vincent Gordon Child have argued that the so-called Neolithic Revolution does not fulfill the criteria of a true revolution. The criteria of a true revolution, namely the suddenness, radicalism, and universalism of a real revolution. And universalism of a real revolution. And universalism of a real revolution. सब पॉइंट लिखो. The changes associated with the Neolithic Age occurred over a long period of 3,000 years. Of 3,000 years or more. Next subpoint. Similarly, comma, many of these changes started much before these changes started much before the onset of the Neolithic Age. Much before the onset of the Neolithic Age. Thus, Neolithic Age. Thus, they were not strictly Neolithic. Not strictly Neolithic. Two or three examples you can take. Example, we find evidence of animal husbandry from the Mesolithic site of Adamgarh. Site of Adamgarh. Next example. Similarly, the Mesolithic people of Bagor lived in artificial houses. Next example. Agriculture was being practiced by the Mesolithic people of the Kaimur Hills. By the Mesolithic people of the Kaimur Hills. कैमूर हिल्स के मिर्जापुर के पास वाला जो रीजन है, ठीक है, ऑफ द कैमूर हिल्स as early as 8000 BC. 8000 BC. ठीक है. नेक्स्ट सब पॉइंट लिखो. दो हम देख चुके हैं, दैट इट वाज नॉट सडन इनफ, इट वाज नॉट रैडिकल इनफ. तीसरा लिखो. thirdly it has been argued that the changes associated with the Neolithic were confined to a few regions and communities. Changes associated with the Neolithic were confined to a few regions and communities. They did not affect the changes associated with the Neolithic were confined to a few regions and communities. Full stop. They were not universally manifested. They were not universally manifested. Okay. Next subheading though. It was a revolution. It was a revolution. The supporters of God and child, the supporters of God and child have emphasized that the Neolithic Age witnessed revolutionary changes based on the following grounds. Witnessed revolutionary changes based on the following grounds. पॉइंट्स में लिखना. सबसे पहले लिखो. While these changes were evidently slow to occur, comma, taking 3000 years, comma, the scale of these changes was much larger as compared to the previous 3 lakh years. The previous 3 lakh years was much larger as compared to the preceding 3 lakh years. That means life changed more in these 3000 years than it had changed in the preceding 3 lakh years. Next point. Secondly, the beginning of agriculture radically redefined the relationship between man and land on the one hand. The relationship radically redefined the relationship between man and land on the one hand and man and animal on the other. Full stop. सब पॉइंट इसी का सब पॉइंट. humans were no longer at the mercy of nature. Comma, they could manipulate their surroundings in a manner that had never been possible earlier. And emerged as resourceful food producers rather than simple consumers. Rather than simple consumers. ठीक है, नेक्स्ट मेन पॉइंट लिखो. Lastly, comma, it was the beginning of agriculture. It was the beginning of agriculture which brought human beings to the proverbial threshold. Brought human beings to the proverbial threshold of civilization. Full stop. Agriculture formed the basis of the earliest civilizations. Therefore, without the Neolithic, comma, there would have been Neolithic, there would have been no Harappan civilization. There would have been no Harappan civilization. Clear? मैं एक पैराग्राफ लिखो, conclusion. On the basis of these arguments, comma, it is clear that the changes witnessed during the Neolithic Age definitely constituted a revolution. Definitely constituted a revolution. Full stop. Definitely constituted a revolution. Changes during the Neolithic period definitely constituted a revolution. They permanently altered the place of human beings in life or in nature. Place of human beings in nature. And placed them at the top of the evolutionary ladder. Now, if you look at the complete picture of human existence, स्टोन एजेस कब से शुरू हुए? 5 लाख BC से. खत्म कब हुए? अराउंड 1000 2000 BC. और उसके बाद से फॉर ह्यूमन बीइंग्स टू माइग्रेट, टू ग्रेजुएट फ्रॉम द स्टोन एज टू द स्पेस एज, it has taken us only 2000 years or so. ठीक है? And that was possible because of the changes induced by the Neolithic revolution. Write down. It became, or these changes became, same इसी में ही, these changes became the basis for the transformation of human beings from the Stone Age, for the transformation of human beings from the Stone Age to the Space Age, from the Stone Age to the Space Age. Clear? So ये हो गया ये debate. And finally, last question. Delineate the regional characteristics of the Neolithic period in India. $200 words, 15 marks. अब देखो, न्यूलिथिक कल्चर्स का हम दो तरह से कैटेगराइजेशन कर सकते हैं. एक तो जैसे क्वेश्चन पूछ रहा है ऑन दी रीजनल बेसिस, और दूसरा ऑन दी टाइपोलॉजिकल बेसिस. क्या देखने के लिए मिलता है हमको? दैट on the basis of this analysis, 4 types of cultures are identifiable. सबसे पहले वाले प्योर न्यूलिथिक कल्चर्स. ऐसा किसे बोलते हैं? किन कल्चर्स को बोलते हैं? ऐसे कल्चर्स जहां पर पहले कोई भी मीजोलिथिक कॉन्टेक्स्ट प्रेजेंट नहीं था, कोई ट्रांसफॉर्मेशन नहीं हुआ है फ्रॉम मीजोलिथिक टू न्यूलिथिक. In fact, the earliest cultures present in these sites are Neolithic cultures only. So there is no prior Mesolithic context. और ये कहाँ पे देखने के लिए मिलता है हमें? वेस्टर्न मोस्ट पार्ट ऑफ द सबकॉन्टिनेंट में, बलोचिस्तान वाले रीजन में, राइट? तो वेस्टर्न न्यूलिथिक. In sites such as मेहरगढ़, किली गुल मोहम्मद, रहमान ढेरी किले, किला तरकाई, etc. In second category, मीजोलिथिक न्यूलिथिक. ये क्या होंगे? ऐसी साइट्स जहां पे पहले मीजोलिथिक कम्युनिटीज रहती थी, gradually their technology, their subsistence base transformed to assume the characteristics of Neolithic cultures. So they evolved out of Mesolithic cultures. And where do we get to find these? जो कैमूर हिल्स वाले रीजन की साइट्स, राइट? Sites such as Chupani Mando, Sarai Nahar, Rai, or Koldiva, Kunjhun, right? These kinds of sites. Third kinds of sites, the Neolithic, Chalcolithic cultures. ये कौन से कल्चर्स होंगे? where life began in the Neolithic phase and then graduated to the Chalcolithic phase. मतलब कि यहाँ पे पहले केवल स्टोन टूल्स थे, बाद में कॉपर टूल्स भी इमर्ज हो गए, राइट. We find concentration of these sites primarily in Gujarat and Maharashtra. And fourth category of sites, प्योर कैलकुलिथिक साइट्स. ये कौन से होंगे साइट्स जहां पे स्टोन एजेस हैं ही नहीं. सो दीज स्किप्ड द स्टोन एजेस. And they appeared for the first time during the Chalcolithic period itself. The largest concentration of such sites we find from Rajasthan. ठीक है, एक तो हो गया इस तरह का क्लासिफिकेशन. Is the question asking us to do this kind of classification? No, it is asking us to do रीजनल क्लासिफिकेशन. एंड केवल ये नहीं बताना है कि ये साइट्स के कॉन्सेंट्रेशन कहाँ कहाँ पर हैं, ये भी बताना है कि उनके यूनिक कैरेक्टरिस्टिक्स क्या क्या हैं, राइट. तो ऐसे में सबसे पहला काम हमें क्या करना चाहिए, एक मैप बना करके दिखा देना चाहिए. राइट. तो यहाँ पे जो सबसे पुराना वाला कल्चर था वो फ्लरिश करता था. दिस वाज द मेहरगढ़ और वेस्टर्न न्यूलिथिक कल्चर. टाइम पीरियड roughly 7000 to 4500 BCE, right? Then a Neolithic culture also emerged in the northern fringes of the Vindhyas Kaimur Hills region. Here, these cultures flourished between the 5th to the 3rd millennium BC. Then in eastern and northeastern India and the Gangetic Valley, a number of sites belonging to 2900 to roughly 1500 BCE flourished. 2900 to 1500 BCE flourished. In the region of
Vishal, how can I help?
In the region of Kashmir, some Neolithic cultures sites emerged, flourishing between 3000 to 2000 BCE. And in the deep south, in Andhra Pradesh, Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, etc. A number of sites belonging to 25,000 to roughly 2500 to roughly 1000 BC flourished. ठीक है, अब क्या करना है हमें? एक एक करके इन सारे के सारे कल्चर्स को कंसिडर करना है. फर्स्ट वन, दी मेहरगढ़ और दी वेस्टर्न नियोलिथिक कल्चर. दिस वी हैव टू सी. इंपॉर्टेंट साइट्स क्या क्या हैं? मेहरगढ़, किली गुल मोहम्मद, रहमान ढेरी, किला तरकाई, etc. Right? What were the kinds of crops that they cultivated? Food crops such as wheat and barley. In fact, they cultivated 3 different category varieties of wheat, and non-food crops such as cotton as well. Right? What were the animals that they domesticated? Goat, sheep, pig, buffalo, etc. What were the kinds of houses that they lived in? Wattle and daub houses of poor quality or mud brick houses of relatively better quality? Mud brick houses. Further, do we have any indication of the existence of any political organization or governance structure? क्या मिलता है? Greenery मिलता है from मेहरगढ़. And if we were to compare the Mehergarh culture to the other Neolithic cultures which flourished in other parts of the subcontinent, material advancement आपको कहाँ देखने के लिए मिलेगा? In this part or in the other regions which were more recent? इस पार्ट में, कॉन्ट्रेरी टू द नेचुरल लॉजिक कि जितना नया होगा उतना ज्यादा मटेरियली डेवलप्ड होगा, वी फाइंड दैट मटेरियली द मेहरगढ़ कल्चर वाज द मोस्ट एडवांस्ड आउट ऑफ ऑल द नियोलिथिक कल्चर्स. वी फाइंड हायर डिग्री ऑफ मटेरियल एडवांसमेंट. एंड thus it is not surprising कि सिविलाइजेशन भी इसी सेक्टर में सबसे पहले इमर्ज होगा, इन दी हड़प्पन सिविलाइजेशन. ठीक है, then next we come to the Kaimur Hills region or the northern fringes of the Vindhyas. Important sites: Koldiva, Punjun, सराय, नहर राय, महादहा, महागरा, etc. Right? What do we find? Are these pure Neolithic sites or are these Mesolithic Neolithic sites? Mesolithic Neolithic sites हैं, right? So Neolithic culture emerged out of the Mesolithic cultures that flourished here. और क्या देखने के लिए मिलता है? That rice instead of wheat or barley was the staple crop in this region. What else do we get to find? और क्या देखने के लिए मिलता है? एनिमल डोमेस्टिकेशन में buffalo was the most prominent, and in this area, in comparison to the other areas, fishing continued to be an important activity. Clear? Then we have the sites of eastern and northeastern India. Names of certain sites: Chirand, Senuar, Saradi, Selbelgiri, Sarutaru, Gaujali, Heding, etc. Right? What do we see? Out of all the Neolithic cultures which flourished across the subcontinent, यहाँ पर relatively सबसे poor level of material development देखने के लिए मिलता है. Another unique finding, we find the use of bone tools from the people living in these sites. ठीक है? Especially ये जो ईस्टर्न यूपी, गोरखपुर और नॉर्दर्न बिहार वाले साइट्स हैं, यहाँ पे बोन टूल्स देखने के लिए मिलते हैं. चिरांद इज ऑफ specific importance for the use of bone tools. Then number 4th, the South Indian Neolithic culture. Important sites: Utnur, Payyamapalli, Hallur, T Narsipur, etc. उतनूर कहां पर? आंध्र प्रदेश, पय्यमपल्ली, तमिलनाडु, हल्लूर एंड टी नरसीपुर, कर्नाटका में. What do we find over here? That animal husbandry appears to be a significantly more important occupation than एग्रीकल्चर. एंड यहाँ पे जो एग्रीकल्चर होता भी था वहां पे कौन सा क्रॉप डोमिनेट करता था? मिलेट्स. देन कश्मीर नियोलिथिक. क्या देखने के लिए मिलता है? इंपॉर्टेंट साइट्स. बुर्जा होम एंड Bufkral. Unique type of dwellings over here, pit dwellings. Pit dwellings matlab on the hillside people did not build overground houses, above ground houses, rather they used to dig small pits in the hillside and live over there. इस तरह के कई collections of pits एक जगह पर होते थे. Why? Primarily because of the colder climate over here. We also find the use of bone and antler tools. एंड यहाँ पे यूनिक फ्यूनरी प्रैक्टिस क्या मिला है? डॉग बेरियल का. ठीक है. सो दिस इज द एनालिसिस ऑफ द रीजनल वेरिएबिलिटी ऑफ द नियोलिथिक एजेस इन इंडिया. कंक्लूजन में क्या लिख सकते हैं? While the Neolithic culture consisted of certain universal features such as the existence of agriculture, animal domestication, pottery, etc. Did they have an element of homogeneity? No. They were characterized by a great degree of regional diversity. And what does this indicate? Why this regional diversity? Did these different Neolithic cultures in the different regions belong to the same group of people? No. Indicating that humans reached the Neolithic stage independently in different regions. Okay? So that concludes all our important discussions with regards to the Neolithic age. Previous years questions देख लिए इसके. तो अगर कोई डाउट होता है उसमें प्लीज लेट मी नो. कोई सवाल नहीं हो पा रहा है तो बता देना मुझे. ठीक है. चलिए देन आई एम गोइंग टू एंड दिस लेक्चर नाउ इफ देयर आर नो फर्दर डाउट्स. ऑलराइट. कल हम फिर शुरू करते हैं हड़प्पन सिविलाइजेशन।